So I guess the only thing that's missing for me then is some assurance that his neighbor is okay with this. Did he have that at all?
He had talked to his neighbor, but he didn't sign anything, he didn't write anything, and he didn't show up. So, you know.
Did he say that his neighbor said it was okay?
I guess the question is if you're asking about the neighbor that's currently in the property or the owner of the property, because those are two different things.
Then you gotta talk to the landlord.
Right.
And they talk to the landlord.
Okay.
So, you know, and haven't talked to him, you know, very sparse, because whoever the landlord is, I guess, isn't around very often. So.
Yeah, it looks like it's a company that
Right.
on the property.
They didn't care. You know.
What would you say the overhang's probably gonna be? I mean, if,
2 foot is what their current plans are on the overhang.
so the base of the building, the footprint of the building will be at the 5 foot.
At the 5 foot. Which is why we felt, you know what, for, you know, the building itself isn't getting any closer, you know, if they would have went with no overhangs, you know.
Yeah,
But from what I can tell, it looks like if we said, no, you've got to meet our standard code, like they could meet all code all the way around if.
They probably could, though, it would be really. tight,
But 10 foot
with the
direction.
to the
10
deck.
foot from the garage, you know, the garage area
okay,
is where they're hitting the
Yeah.
issue. And if they don't get that 10 feet, then it changes all of their, you know, firewall protection and that stuff. And so that's where both the general and the owners were present for the commission to ask questions to. And that's what, you know, they expressed.
Jeremy, your general recommendation, I mean, it seems to set a precedence here, just saying there's no other reason than we prefer to have it 2 foot over.
No.
Gut feeling moving forward, because we're setting a precedence. How do you feel about that? If we're saying, well, gosh, you know what, I'd go 2 foot over if you let me. You did on the last guy.
You know,
What's your thoughts on that?
yeah, that's a tough one, right?
I think this one's even tougher because we're setting a precedent with a management company as opposed to talking to an actual home owner who lives in the structure.
Or someone that may be coming in later, right?
And do we need a change in our code that says, well, if you get permission from your neighbor, you can drop down to, I mean, I'm just curious.
You know,
and technically, I don't even know that that's a good idea because that doesn't, you know, further neighbors down the road could have a problem with it, even if this one doesn't.
I know, and that's been you ask me, that's been the hard part from the planning commission perspective, because coming on, that was kind of what the precedent at least was from those that had been on it coming on with me, was that, listen, the neighbors say it's okay, then everybody's okay with it, then it's good to go.
Yeah.
Is that, and maybe that's part of the questions from the bigger stuff at hand too, is that can we continue to operate that way? You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe it's worked in the small town, you know, from a small town perspective going forward, it's always worked that way. Maybe it can't, you know, I don't know. I leave that to you guys.
But it's good to hear kind of what you're thinking, because it's tough here.
And I think you would get you would get multiple perspectives of that from our commission.
So let's say his neighbor does the exact same thing.
Yep.
Same thing. 5 foot from the eave,
What?
put 3 foot on the floor print, or
Sure.
let's go, forget about the eave. He's 5 foot from the edge. And let's say his neighbor on the footprint of his building. Let's say his neighbor puts one up at exactly the same distance. He's 5 foot at the footprint. When they measure the 10 foot between buildings, do they measure the eave
That's a good question.
or do they measure the footprint?
I don't know how they're gonna look at it.
What is the building inspector gonna say? Because that's gonna be the problem. If this guy has to put up a firewall on his garage and the other guy
Next
didn't.
guy wants to do it and he has to firewall his garage.
Well, that's interesting, because now you technically could have 2 buildings within 10 foot that are opposite properties, but yet their properties on the same property have to have a
So the
firewall.
building footprint would be 10 foot away, but the eaves would be 8 foot
But the,
or 6 foot.
Right.
Soffits are considered part of the building when it's a virtual plane up and down.
Yep.
We've talked eaves in the past that was the edge. It wasn't the
It
foundation.
wasn't the foundation, it was.
That's what we've talked about before. Now, I don't know, maybe this is different, but I think.
That would,
Wow.
it would
that's-
open a. Yeah, that one was not discussed.
So you're allowed to be 6 foot away from your neighbor's building, but 10 foot from your house. If we allow this variance every time, your soffits could be 6 foot apart from me to Paul.
Yeah.
But if it's your own house, it's gotta have 10 foot.
Right.
And I don't know if that'll fly with the building inspector. I just don't know.
If anyone were to build next to it. Or a shed or this or that, or whatever, that's a good question.
I think the more exceptions we make to our code, the more challenging it is for the planning commission to do their job and for any success, subsequent board to do their job.
If I knew that answer was the building footprint, when you measure 10 foot between buildings, I would grant it in a heartbeat. I don't have a problem with that. But if that 2 foot eve is where the building inspector measures from on 10 feet between buildings, which seems more likely that that's where he's gonna measure it,
Right.
then I don't want to get us into a predicament where now the neighbor wants to build this same exact way and he has to put a firewall on it.
He has to put a firewall and the person existing wouldn't. Even though there should be one both of them.
And he should follow the standard rules for a setback, which would be any overhang of a building. It's a vertical plane. It's not where the foundation is. It's a vertical plane anywhere within that.
I could see his view as well, though. The odds of someone building a shed next to him are pretty slim, probably.
I don't know if we want to make an approval based on the interpretation of the building inspector. I just don't.
Even if we thought it was different, then shouldn't we question about the fireproofing of soffits and all that stuff? If we're saying you have to have fireproofing within 10 foot of your house, why wouldn't you have to have it if you're within 10 foot of your neighbor's property or neighbor's building, potentially?
Yeah.
And again, this is
Are you
all,
asking someone if they know the answer to this question, Nikki? I wonder if we get John. If John knows the answer to the 10 foot between buildings.
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know the answer, but that's something that we could probably discuss with the builder himself and tell him that we're going to require you to, if you're going to grant a variance, that you're going to be required to have whatever the building code may be, a double 5/8 drywall on that abutting wall to the neighbors, just in case for some reason they ever wanted to build something there. That's what your discussion is. I'm assuming that in case somebody wants to build the same thing on the lot next, then we'd be too close, So.
Yeah, I don't know where the building inspector is going to measure that 10 feet. Does he measure it at the footprint or at the eave?
From the eaves. It's from the eaves. You have to be 5 feet away from the lot at the eave.
Yeah.
John, you're saying if they just require this guy to build that firewall, then that takes care of anyone else who would want to build.
I would think that would take care of anyone else too. And then if somebody else wanted to be, but they would have to, the next people would have to do the same, even if they were at the 5 feet then. Because they'd be within, they would be within the 8, they're trying to get 10 feet away from any other structure is what they're trying to do. So if
That's no different than my garage though, John. I had to cut off my overhang because I was
Too close.
Correct.
too damn close. Plus the engineer or the building inspector made me make that a firewall
On
just
top.
because it was the neighbors. So
correct.
that ain't the end of the world.
No, it's not the end of the world, but what I'm saying is if the neighbor were to build something, they may have to do the same thing, do a double 5/8 drywall.
Right.
For the world. Correct.
So the option would be to grant the variance requiring a firewall that would go towards the neighbor.
I'm assuming they're gonna make them do that anyway.
Right.
Or tell him he needs to move that, tighten that up, follow the 10 foot between your deck and the house and just not get the 2 extra feet.
And not get the 2 extra, which I think they're still able to build the footprint that they want.
They just don't want to go back.
Because now they would have to go back some as opposed to over some. So it would just push them back a little further to that clip or whatever, the drop off. Is the,
So if we measure from the eave on the buildings and we give this guy 3 foot from the eave to the property line, then the guy next to him,
would have to firewall.
we could still grant that guy of the same variance, and if they both do a firewall, then they would be okay.
Based off what the current code would make them do. Yes.
If you kept granting variances.
Yeah.
I guess that's leading into my question of, do we want to set this precedence? When do you pick somebody and go, nope, now you can't do it? I hate to think that way, but at the same time, it's like, man, are we opening a can of worms saying, okay, it's not that the guy is landlocked or something, that we're trying to help him get something in place. It is.
To me, it sounds like if he was to rebuild his retaining wall to the back, he'd be more comfortable going back and he wouldn't need a variance.
That's my understanding. I mean, and at the same time, the 5 feet is what we came up with when we had someone build on the property line, and we said 5 feet we feel is a pretty fair distance to build from a property line, I mean, we talked about even more at one point, within that whole conversation.
Yeah, and that doesn't include, John, I don't believe that includes gutters, right? You don't measure the gutter into it.
That I don't know, Travis.
Okay.
I don't
think so.
I don't
you
think
would.
the gutter counts.
I don't think so.
You have downspouts and all that runs, and they gotta run down somewhere.
Yeah.
That's, space gets pretty small in a hurry.
Is there a utility easement that runs that property line too? Any,
I wouldn't think so.
no?
I don't know where they run cable, but the sewers go in from the street, don't they, on that?
Sewers in the street, water's out front,
Yeah.
cable and power are both out front.
Up
I'm
front?
not sure where gas runs.
So most everything is probably coming from the street. Gas could be behind, I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure.
No. Jeremy, I don't recall how long you've been on the planning commission, but in your tenure, have we made an exception on the
Sidewall,
on the side?
sideline.
Have we? Yeah, there's been
We had a gotcha addition.
3. There was one. Was there a gotcha addition one?
I thought there was one where they were in a corner.
Well, they wanted to, but I don't think we approved. I don't think we ever got one for that, did we? There was.
No, they didn't end up
Down the
doing
bottom.
it.
Yeah.
They bought a different lot.
Yeah, they ended up
And they
finding
sold
a
their
different lot.
garage.
Chamberlain's,
Mhm.
yeah, they moved down. There was one up in a cul-de-sac that it was a corner of a soffit.
Yep.
That just one corner, not the whole thing, towards the front of the garage. And it wasn't a separate building, it was an addition onto the house. But it was about a foot corner.
That was an attached garage.
Yeah.
And so whatever, which was some really weird because it was angled.
Yeah.
It wasn't straightforward. And then I think Worley, when he built his, there was a variance for that one because it went back in the same footprint, which was
The original. Yeah.
really close. I mean, it was like maybe a foot or two.
Yeah.
To the property line. And he did have signed, documents from neighbors that were fine building back in that same footprint.
I think,
We did, yes, we did Tollis's, but there was nothing that happened with that one. Because they have since sold that property, so.
I know we did one up in the cul-de-sac up, I can't remember. I don't know the name. Is it Oak Ridge Court up there by, we had Rod Griefey sign off on it.
Yeah, it's not Oak Ridge, but it's different one.
Yep. That was the one that I remember, I recall. And we did require the neighbor to sign off on it. So.
Yeah, that was that one that front corner soffit crossed over.
I think so. Yeah, it was connected to the house though.
Yep.
This one was,
Garage addition.
yep.
So I want to say, Gordon, to answer that question, I think 3 or 4, maybe, and I think 5 years.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's challenging because I know we want to, be accommodating to the residents. But at the same time, when is our code our code?
Yeah. Especially with an odd size lot, that definitely makes it difficult, but I would just feel a lot better if I knew where that measurement's coming from when the building inspector says 10 feet between buildings, If we know it's the eave, then gosh, I don't know that we should go 3 foot.
And this doesn't change it, moving 3 foot on this plane. I'm
Well,
not
2
doing
foot.
justice, but even this garage moving left and right this way is not changing this here. And there's more than, again, pushing 15 feet.
So the problem with moving it left on the drawings
Okay.
and giving 2 more feet on the side would be that he couldn't get in his garage door then? Is that, so what we're wondering is,
I don't know if they actually mentioned that part.
because when you look at the scale of this drawing, it looks like there's 12 feet here or more. So our question is, why couldn't they move this over? And I'm wondering if getting into if there's 2 garage doors here,
From an angle perspective.
is that what his problem is with moving it over? I mean,
I think,
or is this not
when-
really the
no.
scale?
I don't know how to scale this really is.
Everything measures to a scale. I just used a piece of paper and based it on 10 foot and everything else scales the same.
Scales the
So
same.
this looks
So
like.
they have their clearance.
Yeah, this here to here measured right at 10 foot from there to there. And this measured just short of 15 this way.
And I really think if moving that back, it's doable to get their 10-foot here, because I don't think that probably includes the E. But the back was probably one of the biggest concerns, and we said, well, it's not 25 feet anymore, it's 5. I think that definitely helps alleviate it. So I think it's built, either way, I think it's buildable as it is. Whether they got the 5 feet on the side or the 3 feet on the side.
That's probably my hardest
There's
thing to
an option,
understand. Is they can get there without a deviation.
right?
Or, that's where I'm struggling is for convenience, we're gonna oversee our code.
We could table this and get our questions answered by the building inspector, and then we could still come back to it in a month. I'm sure this time of year, is a month gonna make a difference to him? Did it sound like?
Thought there was a reference to a March 22nd start date of the
Start date
project.
or something like that. I mean, I think they're just trying to make sure they got their ducks in a row.
Yeah.
They can.
Is there
Order this
any reason
stuff
to
in.
delay it? I mean, if we have the facts and it's buildable per code, do we have justification saying maybe we don't understand something, which,
Well, if it's justifiable per code, then we don't need to offer variance or.
well, that's kind of what they're asking for a variance and that if we don't give it. There's my question.
They could still build, they would just need to build within the footprint that is currently there. To the code that's currently in place.
Shift it or shrink the garage.
Right.
The outbuilding.
or push it back a little bit, you know, like.
How hard would it be to cut a foot off of the eave? And move it a foot? Is that a big problem for construction?
No, no, you could build that garage with the, you know, 1 foot, you know, overhang. It wouldn't match the style of the house,
No,
because the house is a 2.
okay,
And that was part of where they were trying to keep their 2 to have it look the part of matching the house.
yeah,
Which I mean, I understood that, you know, you try to, you know, like, keep it the same as best you can, you know.
Well, I think if we were to table this pending more information or him moving his footprint would look better than denying it. Do you guys feel that would be a logical, or are you ready to approve it as is, as requested, I guess? You know, that's up to a motion and a second.
But we're only motioning to approve the variance, right? So no vote, no
So if
nothing.
we
is-
approve the variance, we're approving that eve being within 3 foot. That's what was recommended by the planning commission.
But if there's no motion, there is no official rejection of a variance either. Is there a vote either way on it?
Well, we should vote on it, I feel, or table it.
Okay. So somebody would have to motion to approve it and then vote against it?
Right.
Is that what we'd have to do? You don't motion to reject a variance, do you?
No, I guess if nobody wants to make a motion to approve it, if nobody wants to make a motion to approve it, then we don't need to vote on anything, I guess.
Okay, I don't understand how this part works.
It dies.
Okay,
Then it
If you
does.
don't table it and you don't vote to approve it,
I would not be opposed to tabling it so that we could bring it back on next month's discussion without having to have another hearing. It would be a continuation.
got it.
That was my only concern.
Yeah.
We want to make it look like we're just not trying to shut them down.
Yeah.
But we would like to get more information on what happens if that eve is within 3 foot and his neighbor wants to do the same thing.
Yeah, and I'll put on record that I personally feel that it's buildable within our ordinance and that they should work within our ordinance versus that would be what I would recommend. But if we want to table it so that in case there's a reason to have an ongoing conversation, I'm okay with tabling it.
Fine, yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't be making a motion tonight, so I don't know if either one of you would, but I would not tonight.
I mean, as far as a county building inspector, where does he come in this?
That's what I'd like to talk to and say, okay, here's what, if we allow this eve within 3 foot, then is his neighbor going to be able to build an eve within 3 foot of the property line? You know, and once we start doing that,
And then should we? if we're
is the
gonna-
10-foot distance between buildings? I want to know, is that on the footprint or the eve? That's my biggest question.
Yeah, and then if we're gonna start approving this, should we reconsider changing our code? So the planning commission doesn't have to go through it, the iterations of, we're gonna keep approving this 2 foot,
I'm sure
That
Jeremy
either-
would appreciate that.
that either we're saying it's,
Make it easier for us to understand, you know.
Yeah,
If you ask me though, by far, I would say that the building itself, the building footprint should not be closer than 5, right? Like,
yeah.
and in part of the conversation that we had in the recommendation was that the building wasn't getting closer than 5. It was the eve we were a little more okay with than the building itself, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, even no more than 3 foot off the property line.
Is what that would be if it's a 2-foot eve. And you're building more than a 2-foot eve, then it's not really the eve. Right. And it's a covered porch, so.
Well, if there's no further discussion, then I'll say we could table this discussion. If we need to bring it back for next meeting, we can do so. Item B, discussion and possible approval of creating a comprehensive plan committee as recommended by the planning commission. So what do you have for us on that?
Yeah, so I guess where the planning commission is sitting is looking for maybe more vision or guidance from the village board or a committee to set that. As we looked at the planning, comprehensive plan from 2011 is when it was last looked at, I guess, and updated or put into place. Maybe that was the first one even, is my guess. If you look at that, there was a whole comprehensive plan committee. And it pulled from the board, from the planning commission, from people from the outside even, I believe. And I guess that's where we're looking is if we're really gonna dive into what we want for the vision for Arlington and the direction from a plan perspective. I think we were hoping that we would have a few more opinions or ideas going that way, you know, not saying that it has to be a huge committee, but at least from other, you know, other places getting thoughts too.
Jeremy, it looks like the last time the board, the planning commission got together to kick off this comprehensive plan. Do you envision something like that for the first one to get everybody in the same room and talk about?
Yeah, and I don't know where MAPPA would come into that now that we have one already. We've now seen it, you know, 10+ years in place.
Right.
We also now know some of the issues that come up with it, such as, I mean, I think you guys as the board have seen, you know, houses that are in the corridor of the highway can't sell, right?
Yeah.
Because they're commercial now, you know, is that what we want? If that's what we continue to want, great, then we know, hey, yeah, sorry, we're not granting that, we're not, you know, that's what it is.
But here's our plan.
But this is the, because,
And how are we?
well, this is why,
how are we
this,
gonna
because this
convert?
is our plan, right?
Right.
And does this still fit what we want? You know, does this still fit, you know? And so we're not opposed, I think some of us aren't opposed to sitting on a committee besides the planning commission, but we didn't know if that was necessarily the planning commission's job to set that vision by itself.
The one word I like in this thing is the key stakeholders, that in addition to all these people and key stakeholders were included. And that says a lot about members of the community that might have a vested interest, people that are passionate about the project and where we go.
Right.
So that's fantastic.
Well, I would think that would be something that the board could support and direct it to happen, you know, form a committee. I know we've got quite a few people interested in downtown. We've got people interested in other projects. I don't think it would be hard to find a half dozen people, you know. Do we want to put a limit on it? Do we want to put an open call? What do we want to do?
I would put a limit on it, just from, you know, I think, I guess if you, my vision would be, you know, 7 to 8 is usually a team, you know, from a good discussion of vision to guide, but that doesn't mean, you know, I think, I don't know how it worked last time, if there was stuff that went out to the community for, you know, feedback and that stuff to be presented. I think that would be a good thing going forward from this, so that, you know, those that are sitting on that committee have, you know, the voice of the community to help drive some of that vision.
Did MAPPA essentially spearhead the creation of the document with the input from the committee? Is that kind of how the format was run previously?
So I'm not sure the dates on this. I don't know how that can be right, because in 2011, I would have been on the board. And I don't remember, it seems like one of my first votes may have been approving this plan. So maybe that's when it came in. Yeah.
It's February 2011.
So I wasn't in part of the formation of the plan. But I can see MAPPA, that's one of the things they do, and they were probably involved in spearheading and probably,
Everything together.
putting everything together for us. But I think we could come up with a committee of people that are in our community and update our plan, which is really all we need. Update go through the plan and say, okay, this doesn't make sense anymore. This does, why aren't we doing something about this? So.
MAPPA did call last week and asked if we had an updated plan, so I don't know that they necessarily expect to be part of the updates. They just want to know if we did update it.
So there was 8 committee members last time on the comprehensive plan committee. Should we start making suggestions on another 8-member committee?
I think that would be,
Maybe a couple board members and then try and get 6 other members from the community. Maybe a couple from the planning commission.
yep. Yeah, because I think there's some discussions that could be had, especially I look at, there's a lot of change that we're we better figure out what we want to be and where we want to go.
Yeah.
Before
Yep.
it just starts happening.
Yeah.
Well, I think you and I had a conversation too, that the property straight north of the existing Gotch addition has now been purchased by Barry Gotch.
Oh, it has.
Oh,
He is now the official owner of it.
okay.
It was always in the Gotch family, right?
It's now Barry Gotch. Yeah. So it's very clear that he's moving towards developing.
Okay.
And that's what caught my attention, that we need to make sure we got our ducks in a row when it comes to code, any new standards we want to put in place, because
Yeah.
he could show up anytime with a set of plans. And that's a good thing. That's fantastic. But just that, it'll be one of those things that we start talking about. Next thing you know, we're too late.
Yeah, better stay ahead of the game.
Well, let's, should we try and email to Nikki our suggestions? Can you see if you can get some volunteers, a couple volunteers from your committee and maybe a couple more village board or village
At
at-large people, yeah. And then maybe by next month, we could have a committee put together and have a meeting. I think that's a good idea. All right, was there anything else you had for us? Thanks for coming down, I appreciate it.
I'm good.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay, communications committee report. I see they're doing a lot of, they're getting down to the nitty gritty and with their fiber optics guys, it looks like.
They are. So Cox has said that they would begin to, quote, release homes the first week of February, if not sooner. So meaning that the addresses will in fact be serviceable. They're not, of course, running that last stretch of fiber immediately to the home from the vault. But once that home is serviceable, then it'll show up on the Cox website and they can call in and then they'll do the installation to the home. VPS for ABB is taking a little different course, but they're on the same timeline. They're saying that homes will be serviceable. I think from First Street to 7th Street was what I was told by ABB. Those streets, they would begin cutting those over in the first part of February. So the activity that we've been seeing most recently was kind of through like 9th Street roughly.
Okay.
Or Poplar. They'll be doing that final splicing to the home pretty soon.
All right. Streets, I talked to Jason. We're gonna sit down and work on our comprehensive plan for streets in the next month. So that's needed by May, but we'll go over anything else urgent. I don't think we had anything urgent at this time, so. That's all we had. Water and sewer. James, what do you have for us?
I was not here last week, so I did not get a report done. I apologize for that. I won't let that happen again. As far as stuff that's going on, you guys have approved Johnson Services, they're shut down for the winter. They said we are on the schedule for early spring to come out. They will do the lining of the sewer main south of the highway, and then there are 4 manholes that they're gonna rehab. Luke from Lane Christensen, they got work with you guys approved in the pressure reducing station. He's just waiting on, everything's on back order, unfortunately. So as soon as stuff gets here, he'll get it here and he'll get that installed, taken care of. The other thing that we had discussed was the SCADA equipment. And I had the quote from HOA. Well, unfortunately, to try to use the money we want to use, we need 3 quotes. So I am in contact with Chetco and Hoffman Engineering. And once we get those quotes in, then we'll go from there.
Travis and I are in the same boat. We're gonna start sitting down and working on our long-term strategic plan for water sewer. We'll probably sit down with James and some, maybe. even make
There's
a
no reason
quarterly
not to
meeting.
make that
Yeah.
some meetings soon and with
Yep.
whoever needs to be involved and sit down and talk through the biggest opportunities for the strat plan to
Yeah.
roll into next year's budget. So we can start talking now, put the money away for it. So we can say, okay, what about James? Where do you think that needs the most help? All that fun stuff.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, we're probably 3 or 4 weeks from a quarterly meeting anyways. Maybe we'll just get that done.
And Nikki, would you book one for us in whatever 3 weeks, maybe right before the next meeting?
And if that's you, will Mike and Derek be here for that?
Again, there's no reason he can't. If you have any ideas or recommendations, this is the piece that we put in place to talk about the right things to set up our services, to make sure we have all the right tools for water and sewer. And then again, on the immediate short list of projects, the things that we need to budget for in the immediate year.
Well, he's been doing it a lot longer than I have, so, the extra knowledge in those meetings is always nice.
Yeah, fantastic.
All right, item C, discussion and possible approval of lease with NextLink, a company that has bought out Future Technologies.
You guys have in your packet the agreement that they sent and then the email from Tim with the changes that he'd like to see. They have not sent me an updated copy of these yet.
So we can hold for another month on this.
Yeah, unless you want to vote on it, approve it with the changes that Tim recommended. It's up to you.
This is water sewer. What are we looking? I'm sorry.
It's on the water tower.
This is an internet service over
Oh,
there.
this is, okay, got it.
It's the Future Tech and they got bought out by this next link.
Gotcha.
Sorry, that's confusing. That's why I put it under the water.
Oh, it's all right. I get it. It's on the water tower, but it's really more probably a communication thing, I guess, more we.
I don't think we have anything else for you, James. If you-
I think
Oh,
this D,
One more.
oh. Sorry,
that's where.
I did forget about that. Okay. So approve the contact tract pending changes by our attorney, or how should we word that?
Suggested changes, wording changes. They're pretty minor
Okay,
changes, I think, for them to make, but
I'm sorry, is it marked in here? I'm looking for his changes.
it's in this email.
Oh, there it is, Tim. There we go. Oh,
7.
I just found it.
He didn't get back to me until Friday on that, so by the time I got information back to next link, they didn't.
Oh, very simple. Okay.
So very minor edits, then it looks like.
Proof of insurance. And defining district.
Right now, it says state of Nebraska court, for Washington County.
so approve the contract as amended by our attorney. That would be a motion.
A motion to approve the contract with the lease
With
with Next Links with recommended changes from our attorney.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the contract from Next Link. Pending changes from our attorney.
Pending.
If there's no further discussion, let's vote on that motion.
Travis Kramer,
Aye.
Scott McLean,
Aye.
Gordon McGee,
Aye.
Paul Kraus.
Aye. All right, item D, James, I'm sorry, I skipped over that one. I should have gotten it done there.
No, that's all right.
So what have they added since? They have added water and sewer to the Ryven building.
Right.
Yep.
So there's two buildings. I'm not sure what the other 2-inch line comes from, but that one has been there for I don't know how long. It was before I was here. So now there are 2-inch sewer force mains that come from the county property. I'm not sure the exact number on what they're paying, but I mean, it's I don't know if they get a discount on it, but I mean, it's less than what a normal household is paying a month. If they do 600 people event, that's a lot of money in the sewer that isn't getting paid.
1520 a year, 1,520 a year is what they're paying.
And we have no idea of how much water they're really going through.
And I don't know if
So
we have meters or not in either of those.
don't they have a meter reading ever?
No.
Okay, well, we need to get in touch with them and just kind of feel where this is going. I was under the impression that everything was metered except for the fire hydrant on the west side of the property.
Okay.
We need to talk with them and make sure we're up to date, because I know they've added some water lines in there too, so. We should probably try and get together with someone from the fair board. I know John Henton probably is the one that knows more, because I think he's put in most of the,
And I have his number. I can
Yeah.
call him and see when he's got time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I need to know if they have meters, where their meters are at.
why don't you make that call to him and just kind of try and figure out what we've got to go on and what has changed since we negotiated this contract. I think it's been 6 or 7 years since we changed anything on their contract, so let's get some more information from them. Let's find out what exactly they've got that's not metered. If it's just that one fire hydrant, you know, maybe we should check their meter readings and try and make an estimate of what they're paying. Is that fair? And so see what you can get from John, and maybe we can sit down at a later date with him and try and come up with something that would be fair to them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not concerned about the water usage. It's the sewer.
Yeah,
It's a ton of money to, to have Fremont treat that. And
yeah.
I don't know if they're exactly paying what they should be.
All right.
That contract, was it just ongoing?
I could not find the contract. I had instructions in the booklet and could see what they'd done in the past years. I could not find the contract. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just have not found it.
Okay.
Sheriff Robinson texted and said he wouldn't be able to be here tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, James.
I haven't noticed anything lately or the sheriff. Has anybody seen anything? But you've got a grin on your face.
There was a note in the paper about, a car stopping in front of homes. And so there was a time reference. I went back to my camera in my house, and sure enough, I could see him. It looked like it was two young, but sounded like it was two young girls just randomly stopping in front of people's homes and singing. It was kind of humorous. So
It wasn't my daughter, was it?
it was not. Not. It was a black car. My camera isn't good enough to get the license plate numbers. Man, so it's great.
I've seen some interesting things on the sheriff's report lately, but nothing that causes concern for me.
Yeah, it's a pretty good detailed report. We haven't had a quarterly meeting or anything lately, but probably have to do that pretty soon.
Well, if nobody has any concerns for Robinson, I'd say we can move on then. Item G, Parks Committee Report from Travis and Gordon. Do you guys have anything exciting? I noticed we got a bunch of new
Go for
lights up.
Well, we can certainly start talking about the auditorium bathrooms and where we're at with those. So I left a message for Molly at Chummer on Friday. She was out of the office, but she called me back today and had noted that they had failed to put the bid into a website, a portal where contractors could view that. So that would explain why we didn't have anyone attend the pre-bid session. So she confirmed that they did in fact post it on Friday. So Nikki, I don't want to step over anything that you had already talked with Molly about it.
I have not.
Okay, so I'll just keep rambling and you can, so they are now recommending that we, I guess we'll have to update the notice to reference a pre-bid session on January 26th. And then the bid opening, I think she's recommending the 9th. So I think that's probably where you were going with cost of the paper notification.
Yeah, I think we should send the invoice.
We can certainly request them to pay for this
Request deduction of our bill by $367.50 for the,
Well, that certainly answers our other question then of, do we need a special meeting before our next meeting? Probably not. To review the bids and award the contract.
So what's the sequence, Nikki? So on the 9th, if in fact the bid opening is on the 9th, then we would need a special.
Well, I mean, if you want to approve it before your next board meeting, you would need a special meeting. We just also need to make sure that they understand that they can't, I mean, they already sent that document out to companies without communicating to us that they were changing all of these dates. So we just need to.
I don't know if, so that email from Nathan's Day, what you're referring
Yeah,
to?
it said that they already sent that.
Did they already? Okay. I told
It just
her,
concerns me that they're not really keeping us in the loop on things like that because we have requirements and.
okay, I did not give them, so when I talked to Molly today, I did not give her any approval to do that. I said we would discuss it this evening at the board meeting and get back to her. So I agree with your comment. We need to rein them in a little bit and make sure they're literally dotting their i's and crossing their t's on some of these documents.
Literally. And I was maybe gonna give Molly a call tomorrow. Open communication.
Yeah, maybe we could do that together and I might ask to speak with some other folks at Schemmer just to let them know where we're at, our thoughts on how things are progressing so far to date.
yeah.
Okay.
A little concerning.
I think the company is good, right? They're in this space, they're reputable, but we just need to give them some guidance on this specific
Well,
project.
and Molly had made a comment early on that this was she didn't finish her sentence. This is the first something that she's done. So, I mean, she's learning too.
Yep. Okay.
But it sounds like there's a laundry list, like maybe reprinting some documents with some spelling errors. It sounds like there's a bid document that has JEO on it,
Yeah, that's what she sent out to those two companies.
that has to be changed.
And I she had, I had that in a Word document by 10 a.m. tomorrow to be able to get it in the paper in time for those dates to work that they put out there. So
They aren't online by chance, are they? Okay.
that is Elizabeth and John.
Invitation to bid that they sent out.
It needs to happen.
First thing.
Yeah, that's really odd unless does JEO play a role that we're not familiar
No, I
with?
No,
sent a
it's-
sample.
So they wanted a
You
form letter.
sent, gotcha, thank
They
you.
wanted a form letter and we expected them to be able to
Yes, all right,
delete all the unnecessary.
right.
I spoke to Nikki this week and you had a good point that unless there was a bidder, when we opened the bids and accepted a bid that really wanted to start before our next meeting, there may not be a reason to approve a bidder before the meeting anyways. If they're all saying we'll do work in March and April, then we wouldn't have to have a special meeting
Yeah.
because they wouldn't be starting anyways.
So I was just going to add to that though, before I knew they were changing all the dates, that maybe at that special meeting, we could also approve the new deputy clerk hiring.
Okay.
But if we're not doing that, then
We already have that position in our ordinance and I
you don't
thought
have
we,
to approve the actual.
I felt like we gave Nikki discretion to do that. Did we want to get involved in that?
I don't know that we have anything that says that we have to
To
approve that.
me, it feels a lot like, well, other than the fact that it's a position filled by ordinance, it's a lot like John hiring
Yeah.
summer help, part-time help.
I'm-
What do you guys feel? Do you guys want to approve her
Just say it.
selection?
But even legally, I don't think there's any reason we have to approve it, is there? If we're,
If we gave Nikki the discretion to hire a clerk.
Yeah.
And we trust Nikki to hire a clerk, then I don't have a
Yeah.
problem letting you do it. Let
He's
somebody
gonna-
else.
He knows the ins and outs of the people. It's not like we know anything about it anyway, so
right,
we're trusting their judgment.
that's a great point. It's not like we're interviewing anybody.
Right.
We're pretty much, you just give us a name and either what are we gonna do, say no? It'd be, you wouldn't be recommending them anyways if you did.
Okay,
Uh,
so we can move on to the library report.
yeah,
They did have a meeting this month.
they do have a survey included in our packet this month. My takeaway from it was mostly just facts and figures, some interesting stuff. I was a little bit surprised by the use, the patrons. I was impressed. It was more than I really thought and realized. So it somewhat makes me feel better about our time spent and revenue spent on the library.
Yeah.
Not that I was concerned, but it's reinforcing it. It sure does make you feel better about it.
Fairly consistent numbers from month to month. It's good to see. Pretty impressive, the grants that they're being awarded.
Yeah.
It's great.
All right. We have no other questions on the library report. I don't see what is the 5,200 of ARP that they want to, what do they want to spend it on?
Well, they got this 5,200 in the ARP Act funds and there's specific things that they have to spend that money on. And just to streamline the process,
Is this
we
anything
just kind
like
of
the,
talked about maybe if the library board can approve just the spending of these specific funds. I don't know if that's something you guys want to allow or not, but they just wanted to be able to get these things purchased without having to wait for the next board meeting.
And they provided a list of what they wanted to spend it on, didn't they?
I don't have a list yet.
Because I think if they did that, there's no questions. It's pretty cut and dried. Here's a list of things we want to do or get.
Yeah.
And Nikki, this $5,200, this is separate from the other
Yes.
dollars at
Yep.
Village. Okay.
No, this is separate money. So I can,
earmark for the library?
yeah, I went directly to, well, yes.
Well, then if we have a library board and we trust them, then I have no problems approving money that was earmarked for the library.
I'm sure they're following the guidelines, what they can spend it on anyways.
Wasn't this an issue with our audit that we had to have oversight on their spending Wasn't that when I first came on the board 3 years ago, wasn't that why we got audited on the library? Was that we did not have oversight to where they were spending money with? Wasn't that the issue?
So they'll still have to give us all the receipts and you guys will still approve the purchases. It'll
I think
just
the
be-
problems we were having was they had their own little fund over there that people donated to.
Right.
It didn't come from city revenue.
Yeah.
But yet the expenses should have been categorized under the library budget, and that's, as long as we're channeling everything through the proper channels.
Which
I think
by
we're-
categorizing as we had to make approvals on it to say you have board oversight on spending. And that's where I was going with that, is that, okay, you had to put that money back into the city bucket. And city money has to be channeled through the board through approvals. That's where I was wondering if we're getting stuck here, that we have to, again, it'd be easier just to say, just do whatever you want, but I'm wondering if we have to do that.
So my thinking on it was kind of like the FEMA dollars where we got this much money from FEMA to fix the ball field bathrooms. So you guys said, yes, we're authorizing you to use that money to fix the ball field bathrooms. And then they bought what they needed to buy to fix those. And then it went into the expenses in the report that you guys then approved as, we paid Menards this much money
Right.
for the drywall or.
But we knew ahead of time what they were spending that FEMA money on. We knew we were spending X dollars on fence, and
Yeah.
where I'm going with this is I'm a little concerned. Not that I don't trust them to do good with the money, but if there's ongoing expenses tied to their investment. So say a piece of equipment they buy that now has $100 a month maintenance fees or something that we would be on the hook for in the future budget. That's the only justification I have, saying it sure would be nice to have a little bit of an idea of what, if it's just books, you may not think twice about it, but it seems like that we probably should know more about it.
So do we need to make an approval?
Unless you just want to table it and ask for a list of what they intend to buy with the money. And talk about it next time.
I think that makes sense, because Nikki, given what you learned about ARPA dollars in general and kind of limitations, there could be more limitations than just library, right? Maybe something specific within the library that they have to spend money on. I'd love to have your,
And I haven't
I-
seen any of their requirements. I haven't seen any of their paperwork on what they have to spend.
Then it's probably a good idea that we get a list of what they want to spend it on and double check it when we get all the requirements. So,
if they could,
and obviously for ongoing expenses, that's something we need to know about.
And that's an extreme end, but making sure we're in compliance with everything, because ultimately come back on us if there's a problem.
we can, one of us can reach out to them. and-
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, Nikki,
Yeah,
You get that? Okay, to make sure they're.
So we'll table that as unfinished business.
Yep.
Item E, discussion regarding the need for a special meeting to approve auditorium bathrooms, is we've already been over that.
yeah,
I don't think that we need to worry if they're gonna push back their bid date, so.
Paul, one more thing on the parks.
Yep.
Gordon and I got together on Saturday and kind of went over our last year's strat plan for Parks and Rec and started revising it and updating notes and comments, kind of where current projects are, the ones that are completed. And we think we've got a rough draft. It's rough draft until we get through the final strat meeting later in May. I think besides a few notes, we're to the point where we'd like to get together with, say, Nikki, John, Tyler, and bring in a bigger group of people that might be involved with Parks and Rec, the subcommittees, anybody that has questions. So we get as a complete
Picture.
plan as possible before we get into that meeting as a board, and then we're ready by budget time.
Yeah.
Same thing we're doing everywhere else, but we did the first phase of it, which is a sit down, making sure our notes are updated, and we have weighting on different projects, ones that are struggling, maybe falling, ones that are rising, just things like that, so that we can make recommendations as a committee to everybody else.
Sounds good.
I also wanted to make sure you guys saw, we did get that insurance payment for the walking trail lights. $12,126.
Excellent.
and 2 cents.
I should know this, but John, are those lights up? I think they are, but okay.
Yes, they are.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
All right, Cemetery. You guys have anything new?
Yeah, nothing to report at this time, just kind of, it's a little nice weather and the veterans do their thing. More to report, hopefully.
I do have one comment. So Nikki, I've been playing around a little bit with the website. So I did post in the development area, posted all of the directory.
Okay.
So it's out there. I've got an overhead drone photo. I need to get that put out there as well. And then we can maybe just put some commentary to describe what it is. And then hopefully get that wrapped up. We'll just have to iterate on it as time goes by. It's probably gonna take others who are much more talented than me to make it better.
All right.
And then maybe we can get together between now and the next meeting and work on the plan for the cemetery.
Sounds good.
Kudos to Travis for the Parks and Rec doc, because that makes it, that effort that he put in a year ago makes it so much easier to update now going forward. I think it's a good template for each subcommittee to use.
I was impressed when I saw it. I think it's a good way to move forward. Helps us be more accountable.
Great.
All right, item I, administrative. I didn't see anything exciting in the permit report. Anybody have any concerns, questions about that?
Lots of exciting construction again.
Yeah.
4 houses alone in Gotch going up right now.
Mhm.
No questions on that. Update on G-Works ACH transition.
Yeah, so, we have until the end of March to migrate everybody from the old ACH systems to the new ACH system. So everybody who's on automatic withdrawal and has not migrated to the new system, I will have to manually migrate them at the end of March. So.
So you're saying get busy? Get it done?
So manually, meaning,
Yes, I will have to go in and enter everybody's bank account information, like open an account, activate them in front desk and put their bank information in, which isn't the end of the world, but I'm
It would
working.
be a lot easier if everybody would do it themselves and then they would understand how the system works.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna send out a letter. And hopefully some people have already done it because they saw it in the newspaper. Thank you, Elizabeth. So that's helpful. And if we send out a letter, hopefully some more people will do it, and just as much as we can get those numbers down. When people call and have questions about it, I always tell them, okay, go ahead and this is how you go in online and do it. And if they, not everybody in town has a computer, and some of them have come in and said, I don't have a computer, and then I can do it for them. So I just need to know it's not, especially one at a time, it's not that big of a deal, but if I have to do 200 of them in March, that's not easy.
You mentioned a letter. Is this something we could add to that postcard that we're talking about doing?
I'm afraid that it's might be too involved for the
Okay.
postcard,
Got it.
because I actually have a sheet. They sent me like an instruction sheet that I wanted to put with the letter for people.
Right.
So I think it'll have to be separate.
That's okay.
I do think we should, and it only has to go out to ACH people.
Right.
So I do think we still need to do the postcard separate.
Focus on them.
I've been trying to get a hold of Ben from the extension office about that survey, because I wanted to include that QR code on it also, and I have not
Okay.
heard back from him. So I don't know if,
Well, because we're getting close to the time with ATVs and dog registrations that we're a month in. Is this something we can do and just, again, add the QR code later or do something separate with that? So I'd sure like to get this out there. It's a reminder. It's affected the first of the year that they have to do these things. And we're now officially a month over.
well, they have until March 1st for the dog licenses.
Okay.
And ATV and UTV expire on December 31st, but people aren't necessarily using those right now.
Right.
So.
But they're expired. I mean, if
They're
somebody's on,
expired.
yeah.
Yep, so if we I was hoping February to get all that stuff out, so
If we got done, I'd feel good about it in February. I mean, that's
it's my goal,
cool.
so.
All right, did you have anything else for us?
Just that we also have to add those users to our front desk account as we migrate people over, so.
So that'll start costing us more per month.
Yes, so I'm trying to put it off as long as I can. So we'll just add as we need to until,
Now I'm confused. Do you want us to get it done or do you want us to wait as long as possible?
like, as people sign up themselves, we'll add users, but I'm not gonna do the whole big push until the
Okay.
end of March so that we can wait to add those. But at the same time, we get rid of the ACH module and the e-bill module out of the Simple City, so.
All right, item C, 22 Midwinter Conference. I don't know if anybody's been to one. I think it's a good deal. I'm afraid at this time it's probably not gonna go off in person.
They sent something late Friday. They're still planning on it.
So as soon as we get information, get it out. If you're interested in meeting people from other towns and listening to some seminars, there's great sessions. There's a lot of context there with the people we deal with, like MAPPA, like, other people, other entities that we deal with. So I've been to a few of them. I haven't been lately for a while, but they're good if you've got time to take off and go to them. So Mike, quickly, I will go over what we talked about on the comprehensive plan committee. I imagine that's why you came.
Yes, and I apologize for being late.
No.
So I took you guys.
So we asked, Jeremy was here, we asked for a couple volunteers from your committee, from the board, and maybe 4 at-large community members. That puts us at an 8-person committee.
Personally, I like it smaller, but
Okay, well, and we haven't made a final determination on that. We haven't voted on anything, so if we only get 6 or 7 people, I know that there's probably at least 2 of us on the board that would like to be part of that. I imagine there's at least 2 of you on your committee, so we'll see how it goes,
and I think it's important for you to that group to be really focused,
Yeah.
really engaged. Any other questions that Jeremy could answer? I'm sure.
We're still waiting. We're gonna try and either, as far as the variance request, we're tabled it. We're hoping he'll either move it over closer to his house back enough, or we're gonna try and get some information from the building inspector on where they measure 10 feet between buildings, because our concern is if they measure from the eave to the next building, can we legally give the next guy permission to do the same to where buildings are 6 feet apart at the eaves? It would be a lot easier for us if he could adjust. Or if we're just talking about the footprint of the buildings being 10 foot apart for the firewall, then, I think the board would be okay with, my feeling is that the board would be more likely to grant a variance, but
Oh, I respectfully disagree. I would not. I still would not.
at the 5 foot, okay.
But I just want to be honest with you.
And I shouldn't have
There's no-
spoke out of turn. I'm
I swear,
sorry.
no, it's okay. I just want to make sure we're clear.
I know that was one of the big things we were discussing. I should say that. I should propose to know where.
So is there, just for my application, is there anything that the planning commission should or shouldn't do with respect to that? Because there was, our conversation was, gosh, it seems to be following the intent, if not the literal 3 to 5 feet that we're talking about.
I think our biggest concern was, and not that that really should matter because it doesn't include all further neighbors down the road, but at the very least, something in writing from the current neighbor that says, okay, I'm okay with this. But then our biggest question was, since it's a side lot and there could be somebody wanting to do the same thing, where does that put us if now we have to allow someone else to do that because we've set a precedent? So I think talking to the building inspector and asking him about where they measure between buildings will be helpful. And we're hoping that maybe he'll just try and adjust so he's 5 foot and we don't have to, the eve is 5 foot and we don't have to worry about it.
Perfect, yeah.
But
My concern is a little more broad as far as just, our code says 5 feet and that includes the eve, then what's our parameters for making exceptions? Why are we making exceptions versus following our code? It's just, it's a slippery slope.
Sure.
So that's my broader concern. I personally speaking, 17 years ago, I had to adjust my plans considerably because I was like a foot over.
Yeah.
So I lost, on both sides of my lot. So I lost 2 feet of my third car garage and then had to go back through design plans. And it was a big headache, but I followed the code.
A couple of years ago, I had to cut the overhang of my garage off because I was following the rules, so.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think the rub for the planning commission, what we struggled with is because he fully intended to go back and farther away, except that there's just no ground there. You can build any farther, it's gonna fall off the cliff. But point taken that if we the planning commission and then eventually the board makes an exception, then wait a minute, you did it for the Smiths and the Joneses and the Wires. You can't do that anymore. Look at that.
That's where we
We kinda
stuck
feel
is
like-
where do you stop?
we feel like he's got a couple options. He could either move it closer to his house if the scale is right on that. We feel like he's got 15 foot between the deck and the garage if he moves it to the left in his drawings, or if he goes back to the 5 foot from the property line, we feel like he doesn't need a variance and then we wouldn't have to be on the hook for something down the road. So
Yeah.
we're hoping that, and,
Well, not to mention it's a 40-foot building.
yeah,
I mean, it's not like you're barely putting a car in there. It's, you cut 2 foot off the front.
Point taken.
So he's got many options to get within.
all right. I don't think we have anything else. So I guess we would accept the motion for adjournment.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a motion and a second?
Second.
Let's vote on that motion, Nikki.
Scott McCorney,
Aye.
Gordon Lee,
Aye.
Travis Kramer,
I
Paul Kraus.
All right.
So wouldn't our strategic plan be the same as the comprehensive, right? 'Cause I got that other binder with, that's not the same.
No, they're different.
Yeah, this is the first time I ever heard of it.
So the comprehensive plan is more of what the board should be doing. That's kind of like our footprint of the things we should be doing. So, to meet with